All the remaining Scholomance Academy cards have been revealed, and we're going to go through each and every one of them in this video in a quick fire fashion. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and to the final video of my card review series for Scholomance Academy. We have just seen the live stream, the card reveal live stream that Hearthstone just did. Really good live stream, enjoyed it a lot. What did you guys think about it? Let me know. And they released all the rest of the cards for the expansion. So we're going to go through each and every one of them today. Really quickly, going to give a rating first and say a little bit about the card. If it's more of an interesting card, we're going to go more in depth about it. So yeah, let's get started. First card, Verm Reaver for Mage, 5 mana 3/6, Spell Burst, summon 2 1/3 Mana Worms. So, very understated 5-drop. You kind of need to get the Spell Burst effect. Mana Worms currently technically cost 2 mana, so if you do get the Spell Burst effect, it's basically a 5 mana 3/6 plus 2 Mana Worms, so you're kind of just getting a 1 mana 3/6. Obviously, the spell that you're going to play, you're getting that effect as well. It's not just like you're playing a spell to throw it away, so not too bad. It's not really a 5-drop, it's more of a 6 or 7-drop. Because you kind of need to combo a spell in the same turn to get the effect. But if there is some sort of tempo mage, aggressive mage that makes use of a lot of spells, we saw in the stream make use of evocation really well, getting all those spells and playing on the same turn. To, get those mana worms, really high attack and able to hit face for a lot. So some sort of tempo spell damage mage, which I think can actually see play with a couple of other cards that we're going to see today as well. So this card doesn't seem that bad. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Sorceress Substitute is the next card. 6 mana 6/6 neutral. If you have spell damage, summon a copy of this as a battle cry. So if you have spell damage on the board, you get 12 worth of stats on turn 6. That is providing that you can stick spell damage on turn 5 or on the turn before. Pretty decent. Even if you have to wait a couple more turns to combo spell damage in the same turn, it's not that bad. There is that 1 mana 1/3 spell damage +1 card in Mage now, which is very good with this card on turn 7 even. There is also the Studies card, which discovers a spell damage minion and discounts the next one by 1, which means you can actually potentially get a 0 mana spell damage minion to play on 6 with it, with a little bit of setup. So I think this is a really, really strong card. It's a neutral card as well, so can be used in different decks, and Shaman can also make use of this a lot. There's a lot of spell damage synergy in Shaman as well with this expansion. The other classes might not be able to use this as effectively, but Mage and Shaman can definitely use this card. I think this is really good. I mean, it gets a lot of stats on board. It's really vulnerable into stuff like Flick, for example. True. But it is still just 12 for 6 mana if you can get the effect, which is very strong. So I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10. Firebrand is the next card for Mage. 3 mana 3/4 Spell Burst. Deal 4 damage randomly split among all enemy minions. Very decent card. Good stat line once again. Got the 3 mana 3/4 stat line. And if you cast a spell, it's going to deal 4 damage. Kind of like an Arcane Missile style effect. But only to minions, which is pretty good. So any sort of control-y Mage deck is a little bit like Flame Waker, but it can only deal damage to minions, so definitely more used in sort of a controlling mid-range Mage deck. If you really want to just aggro your opponent and burn them down, maybe this is not the card for you, but it can have some support as well. Think about something like a Highlander Mage. Highlander Mage does play a lot of cheap spells with stuff like, Arcane Breath and Ray of Frost, so you could kind of play this on turn 3. It's very unlikely to die as well. It's pretty min just to contest the board. Pretty good just to contest the board initially as well, so. And if you get the spell burst off next turn, or if you combo this on turn 4 or something, it can clear the board, swing the tempo back for you. So I think it's a pretty good Mage card. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Okay, going very fast through these cards, guys, so apologies if I miss anything. But we have Demon Companion. 1 mana, summon a random Demon Companion. So very similar to, obviously, Animal Companion. This is for Demon Hunter and Hunter. So I love the flavor on this card, making use of Animal Companion and putting in Demons instead. And the effects of these cards, the 3 companions that you get are very similar to the Animal Companion cards as well. There is a 2 taunt, there is a 2/1 charge, and there is, I believe, a 1/2 your other minions have +1 attack. So like Leok, Misha, and Huffer as well. So very interesting card, very flavorful, but I don't think it's very good. I don't think this card will see play. I just don't really see what that kind of wants to really use this card. I mean, yeah, sometimes you get a 1-mana 2/2, it's pretty good. Sometimes you get a 1-mana 2/1 charge, so that's pretty bad against most classes these days. Sometimes you can play and you get Leok and you feel pretty good about that and you get some nice trades and maybe you get to trade up a little bit more, but because it's a third probability every single time, you can't consistently get it. Animal Companion is good just because all of the things you get on turn 3 are very strong, but like a 2/1 charge on turn 1 isn't that great. The best draw is to obviously get the 2/2 taunt, but that's a third of a chance to get that. Just play Blazing Battle Mage, you know what I mean? So I don't think this card's actually very good. It's got a really good flavor, but I don't actually think this will see play. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 10. The Mana Feeder Panthara is next. A neutral card, 2 mana, 2/3 beast. Battlecry, if you use your hero power this turn, draw a card. Obviously very good for classes that want to use the hero power a lot, such as Demon Hunter, only 1 mana, so on turn 3 you can, press a hero power button and play this for a card draw. Very decent. Neutral card draw is always going to be very good now in Hearthstone, just the fact that Hall of Famed Acolyte of Pain. So having the ability to draw cards in any class is going to be very strong. I think this card will see play in many different decks in the next 2 years. I'm not sure about what deck it will see playing currently. Is it good enough in Demon Hunter? I'm not really sure. It can help you cycle cards, I guess, but Demon Hunter already has a lot of card draw. What other class really wants to use this? All the other ones obviously cost 2 mana, so do you want to play hero power, then play this on turn 4? Is that great? It's not that great. It's not bad. I mean, you're drawing a card, but most decks do have a lot of card draw and have better ways to draw cards. Some classes, for example, don't. So if you maybe play Paladin or Priest, which don't really have a lot of card draw, maybe you can make use of this card if you desperately need card draw. So just because it says draw a card, I think drawing a card is really impactful. I think this card is actually pretty solid, and it might see play in some decks throughout its lifetime in Standard. So I'm actually going to give this a 6 out of 10. Cram Session is the next card for Mage. 2 mana, draw 1 card, improved by spell damage. Really cool card. So obviously how this works, if you have 1 spell damage, you're going to draw 2 cards. If you have 2 spell damage, you're going to draw 3 cards, and etc. I think some sort of spell damage mage will come into play next expansion, actually. They showcased the deck on stream, and it looked really, really strong. Imagine playing the 1 mana, 1/3 spell damage minion on turn 1, then playing this on turn 2. That's a 2 mana draw 2. And you don't really need that much upside for this card to be good, right? Even +1 spell damage makes this card really, really good. 2 mana draw 2 cards is pretty decent. I think that will see play. It's a better Arcane Intellect. If you manage to get this up to, +2 spell damage, +3 spell damage, that's going to be insane. This card also combos really well if you play Mizaki, and you can combo it and kind of cycle through your deck as you play all those spells to discount and to improve your spell damage. You can potentially draw like 6 or 7 cards with this in the late game, so this is just a really, really strong card. I think this actually is incredibly strong, and I'm actually going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think this is fantastic. It's clearly what something like a tempo or aggressive mage needs to cycle through their deck and find their burn damage, so yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. Double Jump is a Demon Hunter spell. 1 mana, draw an Outcast card from your deck. Very cool card. It's a 1 mana draw 1 technically, which isn't too bad. But the important thing about this card is it draws an Outcast card, which means the Outcast will effectively always be on after you play this card, right? Because when you draw it, it's going to be on the right-hand side of your hand, which means you can immediately play that card for the Outcast effect. I think that's super useful for Demon Hunter. A lot of the times, Outcast can be very clunky in hand, especially if you're playing a higher curve deck. So having a card like Double Jump and allowing you to kind of more effectively get that Outcast effect going is pretty good. The issue I have with this card is, will it see play in a deck, right? Will it fit into a 30-card deck? I'm not super sure, because there are a lot of strong Demon Hunter cards now. Maybe this is just not quite strong enough. I think it's still a strong card for sure, but I don't know if it's enough to make it in a deck list. There are a lot of cool Outcast cards. Eventually, if they print more Outcast cards, this will be really good. You can play like a fully Outcast Demon Hunter deck, like every card is Outcast. That would be insane. But for now, I don't think it's actually too great. I think there's just better stuff to do in Demon Hunter, so I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. I think it has potential, though. Next up, we have Trick Totem for Shaman and Mage. 2 mana, 0/3 Totem. At the end of your turn, cast a random spell that costs 3 or less. Obviously, mixing totems with the randomness of Mage. Very cool design and very cool artwork as well. You can see the elements on the totem there. Is this card good? I'm not really sure. Let's think about Shaman first. Obviously, some sort of totem Shaman can be pretty good. It is a 0/3 totem on turn 2, which is pretty solid. It's 3 health, so it's a little bit more difficult to deal with compared to something like an evil totem. But I think what kind of brings this card down a little bit is the randomness of the spell generation. It always casts a spell that costs 3 or less, but there's a lot of variance in that. There are some board clears as well. You can potentially cast like a Breath of the Infinite or something, or like a Penance on your own minions. And it's random, right? You could also cast something good like any of the secrets, right? Secrets cost 1, 2, or 3, so getting a secret of this will obviously be great. I'm not sure about how likely it is to get a good spell versus how likely it is to get a terrible spell for you, so it's kind of hard for me to evaluate this card. I think it will see play in Totem Shaman, though, just because it's another totem. It threatens more buffs, and you just want as many totems as possible. In Shaman, this can have a little bit of a downside, but there's not any mass removal for 3 or less. You're not going to completely wipe your board. At worst, you're going to deal some damage to it. But I think it's recoverable, honestly. So I think this card's actually pretty solid. In Mage, I don't think it will see any play. Mage just has better things to do. I think there are, you have Puzzle Box. You have more things to do on turn 2. Like, I don't think this will see play in Mage. But just because it's a totem, I think it actually be pretty decent in Shaman. I'm just going to give this a 7 out of 10. Because I think Totem Shaman is actually going to be pretty strong. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for Trick Totem here. Next up, we have the Steward of Scrolls, a 5-mana neutral card. 4/4 elemental, spell damage +1, Battlecry, discover a spell. Pretty solid card. It doesn't really impact the board initially, obviously. No rush, no taunt. But it does have spell damage +1. So if you have a deck that you really needs to get +1 spell damage, such as the mage deck I was talking about earlier, or potentially a shaman deck too, maybe you want to run this card. It's actually not bad because you also get to discover a spell, so it's pretty good value. The elemental tag doesn't really fit into play in standard currently. That's not really relevant. But discovering a spell is pretty strong. If you value that at 1 mana, this is basically a 4 mana 4/4 spell damage +1. Not too bad, right? It's a bit like Ogre Magi vibes, so this is not great, but it's not too bad. It might see play, but I think there might be better options for Mage and Shaman, which are the 2 spell damage classes. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. It definitely does have potential, just because of that battle cry, but yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. Alright, doing a lot of talking here. Next up, we have Val Fiend Trainer. 4 mana 5/4 for Demon Hunter, outcast summon 2 1/1 demons. So there is a little bit of a token demon synergies in Demon Hunter that we're going to see upcoming as well, and they showed off in the live stream. So this obviously summons 3 minions for 4 mana, which is pretty good. If you can get the outcast effect, this is technically a 7/6, 4 mana 7/6, which is really overstated. I think this card is really good. I mean, at worst, it's still just a Feywing without the effect. It's a 4 mana 5/4. That's not too bad. It's really aggressive. Demon Hunter lacks a couple of 4-drops, to be honest. Obviously, it has the weapon now that will just be revealed, and does still have Kain Sunfury, but this is another good 4-drop for Demon Hunter. I feel like you just don't mind playing this on turn 4, even as a 5/4. And if you do manage to get the outcast effect going, it's really, really good, because you're able to get, as I said, 7/6 of stats for 4 mana. That's pretty strong. So I think this card is actually pretty decent. I'm not sure if it will go into Demon Hunter. I think Demon Hunter will definitely be tier 1 the next expansion. There's so many good cards for it. I'm not completely convinced this will be tier 1 because I'm not sure if it will fit into that deck, right? It's a bit of a toss-up between maybe something like this, or if it goes to a Worlds of Soul Fragment build, then I don't think you want to run this card. So it kind of does depend. I think I'm going to give this a 7 because I think this is really strong. I would have given it higher, but I'm not completely convinced it's going to go into a tier 1 deck. So yeah, it's going to be a 7 out of 10 for me. Next up, we have a Blood Herald for Demon Hunter and Hunter. 5 mana 1/1. Whenever a friendly minion dies while it's in your hand, gain +1/+1. So, pretty bonkers card. Theoretically, this can become infinite, right? Throughout the game. You can play something like a 5 mana 10/10, 5 mana 15/15 in the late game. But if we think about curve perspective, because obviously Demon Hunter and Hunter are curve decks, they want to play on curve, they want to play aggressively. How often are you going to be able to play Blood Herald on turn 5, right? You need to be able to have 5 of your minions die before turn 5 for this to be playable, I think, right? You don't mind playing this as a 6/6. 5 mana 6/6 is pretty decent, I think. That's not too bad. There's no other effects of this card, so maybe you ideally want it to be like a 7/7 or something like that. So you kind of need to have like 5 or 6 minions die before turn 5. Is that possible? If you're running a token style deck, maybe, right? Demon Hunter nowadays doesn't really have that many tokens. Like, they have a couple of obviously 1-drops and 2-drops, but they're not enough to really get this to a beefy enough stat line for turn 5. So at the moment, Demon Hunter doesn't really want to make use of this card. Maybe if there's some sort of token Demon Hunter with Rascal Naga and stuff like that, this card would be great, obviously. But that didn't work in the last expansion, and I'm not sure it's going to work now. And in Hunter, it's even worse, I think. Obviously, you can buff it with stuff like Unleash the Hounds, but it's very unlikely you're going to be able to get this to a decent stat line on turn 5. And yes, you can have some late game with this card, and you can play it on like turn 15 and get like a massive 20/20. But is it worth it to run in your deck? I'm not sure. In Demon Hunter, it also clogs up the outcast position, right? If you keep holding this in your hand, you can never outcast something on the left. So I think this card is honestly pretty bad. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I think it's going to see experimentation, but I just don't think it's good enough, to be honest. Next up, we have Teacher's Pet for Hunter and Druid. 5 mana, 4/5. Taunt, Death Rattle, summon a random 3-cost beast. So same as the Mount Seller with the Death Rattle. The 3-cost beast pool is kind of high variance. You can get either a 5/5 Mukla, maybe a Diving Griffin, maybe a Zigzaw, but you can also get a 1/1, right? You can also get a 2/2, so it's a little bit of variance here for Teacher's Pet. But apart from that, I think this is just a really good card anyway, right? It's a 5 mana 4/5 Taunt, so we've got the Shield of Galakron stat line, which always has an upside, right? The Death Rattle always at least gives you something, and even if it's a low roll and it's a 1/1, which doesn't really happen that often, it's still, you know, technically a 5/6 for 5 with Taunt, so pretty good. And it's a beast, so the fact it's a beast can really make use of some of the effects we're going to see in a minute. It's 5 mana, which means it can be recruited by that new Hunter Druid spell. The 7 mana spell that recruits Beast, which I rated really low, but some of the cards that they revealed in live stream actually make that card pretty strong. So I might have to revise my rating about that one. But I think this card's actually just pretty good. You know, if there's some sort of mid-range Beast deck for Hunter, or just any Beast deck for Hunter, yeah, you want to run this card. If there's any sort of defensive Stally type Druid deck, or any sort of Beast Druid deck, you want to run this card. So this is really versatile for both classes. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Bloated Python for Hunter. 3 mana 1/2 Death Rattle summon a 4/4 hapless handler. So it is basically like an egg, but it's a little bit front loaded rather than just fully back loaded. I think this is pretty good. Obviously, at Death Rattle synergies, it's also a beast as well. So obviously, there can be some sort of mid-range beast build for Hunter that makes use of Shendo Wildclaw, for example. That kind of deck can definitely come to the forefront now. There's a lot of beasts that was revealed in the live stream, so I think that deck might actually be quite decent. I'm gonna have to theorycraft it a little bit more. But this card is pretty good, right? I mean, technically, this is a 5/6 for 3 mana, if you think about it that way, if you put the stats together. And Death Rattle obviously is a little bit awkward for your opponent. You can play Terran Gorefiend after this. You can play this with Pack Tactics to get another copy, for example. Which historically with Pack Tactics hasn't really worked out, but maybe we've hit critical mass of beasts now. You can get this with Scavenging Uni to play it on curve, for example, which is a 3 mana beast. So I think this card is actually pretty decent. It's unclear whether Beast Hunter is going to be any good, but I think if it is good, I think this card will see play. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, because I think it's strong. But I'm just, a little bit uncertain about Beast Hunter. What I'm not uncertain about, though, is this card. Crowlusk Bark Stripper. 4 mana 3/5, sorry. Spellburst, destroy a random enemy minion, and it's a beast. So, obviously fits really well into Beast Hunter, but I think it just fits really well into Highlander Hunter right now. This is an insane card. Spellburst has the Deadly Shot effect, and we see how good Rottnest Drake is. Obviously, you do need to combo this with a spell in the same turn. But even if you play this on turn 4, 5 health, it's pretty difficult to deal with. It's got, like, the Dragonbane stat line. It's kind of difficult to deal with. It's also a must kill for your opponent, so it kind of effectively has Taunt. All the Spellburst cards kind of effectively have Taunt if they still have the Spellburst effect active. So this is a really strong card. I think this will definitely see behind the Hunter. You just got to combo this with one spell, right? Maybe you got the new legendary that gives spells poisonous. You want to run Rapid Fire. Now this is another use for Rapid Fire, right? Maybe you play this on turn 5 with Rapid Fire, and it's a Deadly Shot and a 3/5, and deal 1 damage ping. So, really good card. I think this is a top tier card. 8 out of 10 for me. This will see play behind the Hunter and any Beast Hunter that may arise as well. Next up, we have Overwhelm for Hunter here. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion, deals 1 more damage for each beast you control. Once again, if there is a Beast Hunter, this card will be insane. It can deal a maximum of 9 damage to a single minion for 1 mana, which is like Shield Slam range, which is incredible. You can pretty much deal any minion if you have a full board of beasts. Really good with stuff like Unleash the Hounds, obviously. Maybe even like something like Swarm the Locusts, which can just instantly give you a 7 mana, deal 9, summon 6 1/1 rush minions. So obviously Quest Hunter not really a thing right now, but that's a possibility. If you place any sort of aggressive mid-range beast build, this will 100% see play. But the issue again is I'm not sure if this will actually exist, right? Like, do you want to play this in Behind the Hunter? Maybe you do it just a removal spell, right? Like, even if you have 1 beast in play, it's still a 1 mana deal 3. That's not bad. It's like Holy Smite. So I think this card's a little bit more upside outside of a beast deck as well, because most of the time Hunter does run a little bit of beasts. So it's not just, you have to run this in a beast Hunter build, right? You can be using Behind the Hunter as well, and potentially some other Hunters as well that's a little bit slower. So I'm actually going to give this a 6 out of 10. Once again, it's a little bit uncertain about how good Beast Hunter is going to be, but I think this card is pretty good overall. So yeah, 6 out of 10. Okay, I'm really excited for this card, guys. A warrior weapon, Reaper's Scythe, 4 mana, 4/2 weapon, so true to stat line. And his spell burst also damages adjacent minions this turn. Incredibly strong weapon. I mean, I'm very tempted to rate this 10 out of 10. I think every warrior deck would love to run this, whether they're aggressive or control-y. If they're aggressive, this is just a 4 mana, deal 8 damage over 2 turns. That's pretty solid, right? This is also just a 4 mana, deal 4 damage. Next turn, clear the board, so your minions can go face, right? So really, really good in an aggressive mid-range warrior. Also in a control warrior, because if you use the Spellburst effect, you can basically clear a minion. It has the cleave, obviously, so you can just clear a board, right? From your opponent. So this is good offensively and defensively. Every warrior deck, I think, would want to run this, I believe. I mean, they already want to make use of weapons as well. If you play Corsair Cash, this actually has 3 durability, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, I mean, this card is absolutely bonkers. I'm going to give it a 9. I don't think I'm going to quite give it a 10. I think this will see play in every single warrior deck. I'm not convinced warrior will be like the best deck in the game, so that's why I'm not really giving it 10. I don't think this card is going to be meta-defining. I just think it's a really strong card in a really strong deck. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's a really good card. All of the cards that they revealed today has actually all been pretty good. There's not really been any fillers so far. And Shield of Honor as well is not really a filler either. It's a 1 mana Paladin Warrior spell. Give a damaged minion +3 attack and Divine Shield. This is insane for both classes, because if you think about Warrior, obviously they love to play with damaged minions right now with Battle Rage and with Inner Rage and with Grom. You can do some sick combos with Inner Rage and this card, right? You can Inner Rage Core Elites, and then play Shield of Honor. You can play Inner Rage on Grom and then Shield of Honor for the extra bit of burst. And the Divine Shield can come in handy as well if you want to trade up a little bit, if you're a little bit behind as the warrior. And for Paladin, it's a little bit harder for you to get damage minion as Paladin. Maybe you take a trade and you play this afterwards, so it's a little bit weaker in Paladin, but because it's a 1-mana spell, and Paladin really wants to make use of spells that can target friendly characters in the next expansion, due to the fact that it has cards which, you know, obviously the legendary, that spell burst that triggers off cheap spells, and obviously also the 6-mana 4/5 Taunt Divine Shield that gets cheaper whenever you cast a spell on a friendly character. So Paladin definitely wants to make use of this card. It's very cheap. You know, 1-mana Divine Shield, if the minion is damaged, is really, really strong, right? And you also get 3 attacks, so very difficult for your opponent to deal with. Very awkward board state you can create as Paladin. It's definitely more of a warrior card, but I actually think it's really good in Paladin as well. I think this is just a fantastic card. Once again, 9 out of 10. I think this is bonkers. Going to be really good in Rage Warrior. Going to, you know, increase the damage output they can do from hand with Corcoran and Bloodsworn Mercenary. So, yeah, absolutely insane card. The fact this is 1 mana, you can just slot into any turn. Yeah, 9 out of 10. It's insane. Another insane card is Coerce. 3 mana, destroy a damaged minion. Combo, destroy any minion for Rogue and Warrior. Making use of the combo effect in different classes as well very nicely. This is just strictly a better Walk the Plank, right? Walk the Plank is 4 mana, destroy an undamaged minion. This is a 3 mana, destroy any minion. So it can be damaged, it can be whatever. If it's damaged, you can just automatically play this. And I think getting the combo effect, especially in Rogue, is not going to be difficult at all. It's basically a 3 mana Assassinate in Rogue, because the combo, as I said, is really easy to activate. In Warrior, it might be a little bit more difficult to activate the combo. But then again, it's then easier to also deal with damaged minions, right? To deal damaged minions. So, I mean, Execute is already a card, so I don't think this is as good in Warrior for sure, because Execute is there, right? Why would you want to play this card if you have Execute? Obviously, if you do get the combo, you can destroy any minions, so that's still pretty decent. Definitely more of a Rogue card in my opinion. This might also see play in Control Warrior, I'm not really sure. Maybe you can't really fit a card like this. Maybe the deck list is just too strict right now. But Rogue can definitely make use of this. I mean, this is so strong. Getting the tempo back, right? Rogue has always been really good at getting tempo and tempo swings and stuff like that. So this card absolutely fits perfectly into Rogue. Yeah, I think this is great. I'm going to give this a 7, though. I'm going to give this a 7. I'm not sure how strong Rogue is going to be. Even though I think this card is insane, I'm still going to give it a 7 out of 10 just because it might not be tier 1. Next up, we have the return of Alley Cat. Wolpertinger for Hunter. Very insane name as well. 1 mana, 1/1 beast. Battlecry summon a copy of this. So obviously really great if you're able to buff this, right? For example, you play Scavenger's Ingenuity or any sort of buffs onto this, the copy of the minion will retain the buff as well. But even if it doesn't get buffed, I think it's just pretty decent because it's just a 1 mana 1/1 summon a 1/1. That's just Alley Cat, right? And Alley Cat used to see play in Hunter back in the day. So I think this card is pretty decent. As I said, if a mid-range Beast Hunter deck does exist, this card will probably see play. If it doesn't, this card won't, right? So it kind of just depends. I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm not super confident on the Beast Hunter archetype, so yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. There is some hope though. Next up, we have the Studies card for Hunter, Carrion Studies. Discover a Death Rattle minion, your next one costs 1 less. So that's how all of these studies are going to work. And for Hunter, it's going to be with Death Rattle minions. Yeah, pretty strong. Obviously, I think all these studies are pretty strong just because you get to discover a card. And you get to reduce the cost of a card in your following turn, or next 2 following turns, or 3 following. Like, it doesn't matter, right? It's just your next one. You can really set up some nice combos with this card, in Hunter especially. Quite a few Death Rattles. Obviously, you got Zigsaw. You can play this into Zigsaw on turn 2. You can play this into the 3 mana 1/2 that we just saw in this video on turn 2. So not too bad. I think if some sort of Beast Hunter exists, once again, I keep saying the same sentence, but I think this will see play because I feel like a Beast Hunter would also be kind of a Death Rattle Hunter too. Got Augmented Porcupine. Got Terran Gorfiend. So Death Rattle synergy is definitely there. The Beast synergy is also there alongside it as well. So it should be a Death Rattle Beast build if Beast Hunter does exist. Once again, I'm not sure if it does, so this card doesn't really see play outside of that. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next up, we have a really insane priest spell that I'm really excited about, guys. Power Word Feast. Give a minion +2/+2. Restore it to full health at the end of this turn, and it's a 2 mana spell. Very insane. I was been hankering on about how I want Tempo Priest to come back into the meta, and honestly, I think this card enables it quite a lot. The Frazzled Freshman, the new 1 mana 1/4, is going to be a perfect target for this on turn 2, right? It's a perfect curve, 1 mana into 2. The fact that it restores to full health at the end of your turn means that it's pretty good in the late game as well, right? You can buff your minions up a little bit. You can take a value trade. Maybe you get your minion down to 1 health, but then, oh no, at the end of your turn, it's fine. It's going to go back to full health. You're basically going to put Divine Shield on your minion, technically, right? So I think this card is insane. In the early game, it's really cool because you get to push more tempo. In the late game, it's a 2 mana 2/2, and also give your minion Divine Shield if you want to think of it like that. Yeah, this card is bonkers. Do I think Temper Priest is going to be good enough, though? I'm still a little bit skeptical, to be honest. I mean, this is a really strong card, but I don't know if it has all the tools. It does have Psychic Split, and it does have Gift of Luminance, and a couple more spells that they've introduced, and a couple of minions as well, but I'm not super convinced about it, so I'm going to give this a 7, although I think this is a really strong card. I don't really think this sees play anywhere outside of Temper Priest, though, so yeah, 7 out of 10. I don't want to be too overzealous about this rating. Next up, we have Tour Guide, a neutral card. It is a 1 mana 1/1. I know it says a 3/2, but it was buffed in the video by Scrap Imp. So this is actually a 1 mana 1/1. Battle Cry, your next hero power costs 0. So no other effects on this card. It's pretty weak, right? I mean, you can set this up for following turn. Like if you play this on turn 1, you don't have to use your hero power immediately. You can save your hero power for later on. But I mean, that doesn't really enable that much, right? I mean, if obviously you're playing Demon Hunter, you don't really care. If you're playing any other class, do you really care about the discount? It might be good in some sort of like Magic Carpet Zoo, for example, because it's a 1-drop. But then again, it is only a 1 mana 1/1, and I think there are better 1-drops to have in a Magic Carpet Zoo. So yeah, I don't really see this card seeing play. I don't think it's that great. There's not really any huge hero power kind of build right now. Yeah, I don't think it's actually that good. So I'm actually gonna give this. I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 10. I think this is pretty bad. I don't think this will see any play, honestly. Raise Dead is a pretty interesting card for Priest and a Warlock. A 0 mana card. Deal 3 damage to your hero. Return 2 friendly minions that died this game to your hand. So pretty interesting. Obviously, changes the health of your hero. So it goes in with the Giant card and the other synergy cards that the dual class has. Pretty decent. I mean, can be used for both aggressive and kind of control-y decks as well. Think about Zoo, right? Maybe you play some 1-drops, maybe play some 2-drops, they die. You can play Raise Dead, you can get them back. Maybe you play, like the legendary Gandling card, the 3 mana 3/6. Maybe that dies, you can get this back guaranteed with Raise Dead, or you have a chance to at least. So pretty solid. Also, obviously deals damage to your hero, so works well with something like Disease Vulture. Works well with something like the Dark Glare as well, that gives you more mana back. So a bit of a self-damage archetype coming in with Warlock possibly here. Issue is Warlock doesn't have the most healing, so if you might just end up killing yourself a lot of the time. Maybe you have to play with Soul Fragments to get that healing back. I'm not really sure about that. And in Priest, right, I mean, it can just be kind of value in the late game, right? It's 0 mana, basically give 2 minions back to you, right? Maybe you have some really impactful minions like Convincing Infiltrator or Skeletal Dragon or whatever, right? Maybe even a Zephrys, you're playing Highlander, I don't know. It can just give you a lot of like value cards back in the late game as well. So it's not just a tempo tool, but it's also a late game tool as well. So really, really versatile card. I think it's a really interesting card too. I think this will see play for sure. Just not really sure what kind of deck really wants to run it. I guess most decks can actually run this card, or most decks won't mind if you discover this card as well, right? Off Renew or something like that. So pretty good. Self-damage Zoo, do I think that would be great? Maybe like low tier 2, so I'm gonna give this card a 6 out of 10. We have the studies for Warlock now. Discover a demon, your next one costs 1 less. Demonic Studies. Pretty decent. I mean, you're discovering a demon. The demon pool is pretty interesting. Like, most of the time, you're going to get some... you're going to either get some really cheap stuff like Flame Imp, like a Battle Fiend or whatever. Or you're going to be able to get really expensive cards like Priestess of Fury, or even like a Lord Jaraxxus. So, it kind of does depend. What kind of deck really wants to run this? Maybe a Zoo. Maybe a Zoo wants to run this to give you more value. I mean... you don't really want to be spending 1 mana to discover a demon. You kind of just want to play it. I mean, you do get... the next one does cost 1 less, so I guess it kind of is a free discover. Maybe Zoo does just run this if it's a demon Zoo. Or maybe this doesn't really see fit in anything. I don't really know. I think it's definitely one of the worst studies, I feel like, just because demons are not super great. Obviously, sometimes you are going to get Jaraxxus and it's going to win you the game and you're going to feel great about it, but does it warrant running this in your deck? I'm not completely sure. It might see play in Zoo, though, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Robes of Protection here, a neutral card, 3 mana 2/4. Your minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers, and that is including this minion as well. So whenever you play this, all of the minions on your board will have the can't be targeted effect. Bonkers. This card is absolutely insane. This is a 10 out of 10. I'm just going to say it right now because this is absolutely crazy. Any sort of aggressive mid-range deck would 100% run this card. This is basically like that Death Knight card from Knights of the Frozen Throne. You also get the buff with that, but that was 4 mana. Give your minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers, and also give them +2/+2. This obviously only gives you the effect, but this is so detrimental for a lot of decks, right? Single target removal becomes completely useless. This is super good against Priest, because most of Priest removal is a single target, like Time Rip and Shadow of Death and Shadow of Pain and stuff like that, and Penance. But it's also pretty good for like different decks as well. Like every deck, any deck with any targeting spell, is going to get completely countered by this card, and it's only 3 mana. Like, it's pretty cheap as well. So you just have to develop a board first in an aggressive deck or a mid-range deck, and then you play this, and pretty much your board just cannot die. It needs to get killed by something like Twisting Nether or Plague of Death, and a lot of the time you're just going to kill them before it gets to that point. So yeah, this card is absolutely insane. 10 out of 10 for sure, in my opinion. I think this is super strong. And it's the main strength of this card is also because it doesn't say your other minions. So this also can't be targeted, which means you can't even just clear this minion to then give your, to then unlock your removal. Like, your whole board becomes immune to any single target removal. That's so good. And only for 3 mana, yeah, 10 out of 10 from me. I think this will see play a lot. Another card that I think will see play a lot is the Priest Legendary Mind Render Illusia. 2 mana 1/3. Swap hands and decks with your opponent until your next turn. Wow, this is absolutely insane. Combo disruption to the max. So how this is going to work is when you play at the start of your turn, you're going to get their hand and their deck, right? You're going to get to see what they have in their hand. You're then going to be able to play those minions or play those spells from their hand. If there are combo tools, great. You'll be able to get rid of them. So they can't use it later on and potentially just win the game through that. If they just have a lot of strong minions and you're running out of fuel, great, right? You get to play their minions, and when you swap back the next turn, they're not going to have anything. And the best thing about this is if you're running out of value and you play this card, they're not even going to be able to make use of your hand very effectively, because obviously when you play this card, you get the first say, right? You get to play their minions, you get to play their hand. And then the turn's going to end, it's going to be the opponent's turn, and they still have your hand. But if your hand is trash, and if your hand has nothing in it, your opponent's going to cry. Your opponent can't do anything. You've played all their good minions onto your board. Once you swap back, they have nothing good left, and you're probably going to win the game at that point. So this card can be used against tempo decks like that. Against combo decks, it pretty much just auto-wins the game if they have the comp pieces in hand, if you're able to manipulate that. Against Malagasta decks, it's a little bit different, though, because obviously if you play this for 2 mana, you can't also play the Malagos on the same turn. But you can play stuff like Soulfire and dump the Rain of Fires and stuff, right? And discard their hand. You don't mind discarding their hand because, then they're going to swap back afterwards anyway. So, pretty solid. I think Galacron Priest is going to love this card. Any sort of Control-y Priest is going to love this card. Even maybe a Tempo Priest is going to love this card, right? Maybe you draw dead, right? And you have nothing to play on turn 3 and turn 4. You play this card on turn 2. Maybe your opponent's a Demon Hunter. Oh, they have a perfect curve. Great, right? Next turn you play a 3-drop. Next turn you play a couple of 1-drops. And they can play nothing because your hand has no 3-drops and they literally draw dead. When you swap back, your minions become live again. They ran out of the 3-drop. It's just solid. So I think every Priest deck will actually run this card. This is insane. I think Priest will be one of the best decks in the game just because, again, none of it got nerfed in the last balance changes, and, it's getting some really strong cards. So I think this is I really want to give this a 10, but yeah, you know what? I'm going to leave it a 10. It's a 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10. Reconyx Studies is the Priest Studies card. Discover a dragon. Very fitting for Priest. Your next one costs 1 less. There are a lot of dragons in the game, and dragons usually are pretty strong minions or pretty big minions. So this can have a lot more value in the late game for any control deck. Again, though, I don't think this is a card that you want to run in your deck. I don't think you mind getting it off random spell generation for Priest, right? If you get it off of Renew sometimes, great, right? You get more dragons and stuff like that. You're able to actually discount, the interesting thing about this, you're able to discount the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza that you want to play. You're able to play it on turn 8, which means you're able to play the Alexstrasza and the 2 1-cost dragons on the same turn. That could be an interesting implication on turn 10 there. Maybe, I don't know, but Highlander Priest doesn't seem that good. Yeah, once again, I think this card is good to discover, not good to play in your deck, so I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. Plagued Proto-Drake is a neutral dragon, very big dude, 8 mana 8/8, death rattle summon a 7-cost minion. So very sticky minion, any sort of big deck such as like big paladin or big warrior, which might be coming back into the meta, right? Like dual paladin. Would love to see this card. I mean, it's very sticky, right? It's 8/8. It doesn't have any impact on the board. It's extremely slow. No rush, no taunt, so can be a problem for sure, but it does have really sticky. Has death rattle synergy as well. And 7-cost minions are usually pretty good. You can get a Mount Seller out of this. You can get like a Winged Guardian out of this as well. So some good high rolls with 7 mana cards. You can also get something like a 5/5, which is not even that bad, honestly. So this is pretty good. Once again, though, I don't think you'd run this in your deck. Maybe for playing dual Paladin or, Dimensional Ripper Warrior, you'd want to run this. But maybe even that, you don't want to run that. Maybe there's better stuff to run. So again, not bad to discover off the dragon like Draconic Lackey or something. Or even the Studies card that we saw previously. Not bad to discover this card, I think. But you definitely don't want to run this. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have a neutral card, Crimson Hothead, 4 mana 3/6. Spell burst, gain 1 attack and taunt. Yeah, incredibly good card. I mean, it's a dragon as well. Really defensive card, and it really puts a problem for your opponent, because when you play this on turn 4, it's a 3/6, and it kind of effectively has taunt because your opponent kind of has to kill it, right? If they don't kill it, you're pretty much always going to guarantee to get the spell burst off next turn, because you obviously got to play a deck with spells to be able to play this card. But if you get spell burst off next turn, then it's going to get taunt anyway, and it's going to get more attacks. So your opponent kind of has an initiative to deal with it, has an incentive to deal with it. But if they do, you kind of have taunt anyway. So it's kind of a win-win for you with this card. Good stat line initially. If you get the 4/6 taunt with the spell burst, that becomes really insane. 4 attack, good against priest, all of that. I think it's a really good neutral minion. Has dragon synergy as well. Is it better than Bone Wraith though? I mean, if you're playing a dragon deck, maybe this will actually replace Bone Wraith in Highlander Hunter, because you want to make use of the dragon synergy. I think it's on par with Bone Wraith, honestly, I feel like, because it pretty much always has taunt anyway. So I think this is a really strong card. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Desk Imp. 0 mana 1/1 Imp, and it's a demon. Nothing much to say about this card. I think it's bad. I don't think you want to play this card. Wisp never saw play. Penguin never really saw play. One consideration is to play this with the Gandling card, so you can get those 4/4s out there a turn earlier. You can play, for example, Gandling with a bunch of 0 mana Imps and Wisps. Get the 4/4 board. I don't know if that deck's going to be good, honestly. It might be, but it's too many common pieces to have in your hand, honestly. And outside of that, I don't see this seeing play. There's no real way to buff demons. The Soul Infusion is not in the game anymore, so yeah, it's just about. It's a 0 mana 1/1. I mean, it's just not really that great. You don't really want to run this in your deck, I don't think. So I think because of the combo with Gandling, though, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. Maybe has some sort of potential with Gandling, but outside of that, yeah, 2 out of 10. This is a really cool card, though, I think. Lake Thresher. It's basically got the Cave Hydra effect, 5 mana 4/6, and it's a beast as well. This is a good card, especially in one deck where you can use the 7 mana spell for Hunter and Druid to actually cheat this out and give it Rush. And when this has Rush, it's really, really good, right? Because you're able to attack immediately, you're able to get that cleave effect off. That's incredibly strong. If this card has Rush, it's absolutely bonkers. Issue with this card is if you don't get it off the 7 mana spell and you just top deck it and you want to play it from hand, it's pretty bad, right? It's a 5 mana 4/6 that has no effect on the board. No taunt, so it's pretty bad. It's only good in one instance. It's not like the other 5 mana beast, which you saw earlier in this video, where it just has taunt. It's pretty good. It's a 5 mana 4/5 taunt. It's just always good, right? But this is only good if you pull it off with one card. So because of that, I think it's actually pretty weak. I think you probably still run it if you're playing the beast deck because you want 5 cost beasts. How good do I think that deck's going to be? Honestly, it might be low tier 2. Might even be high tier 2. So I'm actually going to give this card a 5 out of 10, I feel like. Because it's not that strong by itself, but in the right deck, it can be very powerful. Similarly with Judicious Junior, a 6 mana 4/9 lifesteal minion for Paladin. Once again, has no effect on the board, right? No rush, no taunt. But if you can get this out with Duel, pretty good. It attacks immediately, gets that lifesteal, right? And it's also pretty hard to kill as well. 9 health, 4 attacks, so Priest can't deal with it very effectively. Yeah, if you played in the right deck, this card can be good. Outside of Dual Paladin, though, I mean, I don't really see it seeing play at all. So maybe in Pure Paladin, but you don't really want to be playing a 6 mana 4/9 that does nothing. As I said, again, no taunt, no rush. So yeah, only really good in one deck. And Dual Paladin is definitely more of a meme than the Beast Druid deck that I'm thinking about. So this is probably a 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Twilight Runner for Druid, a 5 mana 5/4 beast. Has stealth, and it says whenever this attacks, draw 2 cards. So pretty good minion, actually. Obviously, if you get this off the 7 mana spell, it has Rush, which is pretty good. So it instantly gets that card draw, which is really good. But you pretty much always get card draw anyway. This card has stealth, so it pretty much always at least gets you 2 cards. So if you look at this card as 5 mana, deal 5, draw 2 cards, that's pretty good. That's not too bad at all. It also has beast synergy, so if you're able to buff this, maybe if you play like Shendo Wildclaw, you can also copy it with Shendo Wildclaw. You can play obviously I was talking about the 7 mana spell to get this out with Rush. Once again, this really benefits from Rush, but I think this is better to even play on its own as well, just because of that stealth. It has low health, but having that stealth basically means you're preloading a removal onto the board, and you're pretty much guaranteeing that card draw as well. So really, really strong. Pretty much good for any Druid deck that wants to cycle cards, that wants to draw a lot of cards, so any sort of combo Druid deck. Most Druid decks want to cycle a lot of cards, so yeah, this is just I think it's a really good card. I think this will see play in most Druid decks outside of Spell Druid. So yeah, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think this is really good, honestly. Next up, we have Wave of Apathy, 1 mana Paladin Priest spell. Set the attack of all enemy minions to 1 until your next turn. Really good spell. Once again, do you run this in your deck, or are you just happy discovering it? I think it's more of the latter. I mean, it's obviously a really strong effect. Basically neutralizes the opponent's board for a single turn. It's kind of like a freeze. Obviously a little bit worse than a freeze because your opponents can still attack. They can kind of trade off their own minions still and develop other things. So it's not as good as a freeze, obviously. But especially priests can make use of this effect. With stuff like Cabal Shadow Priest and the Cabal Acolyte, which is the new 4-mana 2/6 taunt that steals a minion with Spell Burst. Obviously, you're reducing all minions to 1 health here, so you can easily steal anything you want. Pretty good. I mean, once again, I think you run this card, though. I didn't even run this card, but it's a pretty good utility card, so I'm going to give it probably a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have a 1-mana Druid card, 1/1 Gibberling. Spellburst, summon a Gibberling. This is actually a really interesting card. On the offset, it seems pretty weak, right? Only a 1-mana 1/1, and yeah, if you cast a spell, it summons another 1/1. But the thing you have to remember about this is the Gibberling that it summons from the Spellburst also has Spellburst. So technically, you can go infinite with this card. It never really dies. Like, your opponent has to kill all Gibberlings at once, because otherwise you're just going to keep getting more Gibberlings right off the Spellburst. And Token Druid, I feel like, will shift towards more of a minion-based Token Druid. I think Fungal Fortunes, the nerf did hit a little bit. I think 3 mana is a little bit weak now for Fungal Fortunes, discarding those things. So I think Token Druid might shift into some sort of early game Token Druid and use Blessing of the Ancients and a lot of spells. And obviously they have Lightning Bloom, so you can get a lot of 1/1 Gibberlings with this card. Right. Oh, notably, if you're on the coin, you can just play Gibberling coin, which gives you 2 1/1s, and you can play another 1-drop, right? Which is pretty strong, like another Blazing Battle Mage. That's pretty good stats for turn 1. I think this card is actually a little bit of a sleeper. Not sure about how good Token Druid is really going to be. So I'm actually going to give this card a 6 out of 10. I think it's pretty good, honestly. It seems really weak, and the art makes it look really vulnerable, but I think it's actually pretty strong, yeah. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Partner Assignment for Druid. A 1-mana spell. Add a random 2-cost and 3-cost beast to your hand. So pretty good if you're playing Spell Druid and you can't run minions. This allows you to get minions without actually running them, so pretty decent, I guess. Also a cheat spell, so Mount Seller can be really good with it. But it's not as good as some of the other spells, right? I mean, why would you run this when you can run Lightning Bloom, when you can run Crystal Power? You get the minions in hand, but you still have to pay mana for those. You get them in your hand, not onto the board. You still have to pay the 2 mana for the 2 cost, and you have to pay 3 mana for 3 costs. So I think this is incredibly slow. I don't really see this seeing play anywhere. Maybe sometimes you don't mind discovering this for more value. But the minions you get out of this are guaranteed to be quite low curve and low value as well, right? If you're in the late game, a 2-mana and a 3-mana card doesn't really do much. So I think this is pretty bad. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 10. Next up, we have another secret for Rogue, Plagiarize. Really cool art. You can see the fox copying the answers there. And it's a 2-mana secret, obviously. At the end of your opponent's turn, add copies of the cards they played to your hand. Really, really cool secret. Really hard to play around as well because it doesn't go off until the end of their turn. So a lot of the times, to play around this card, you kind of just have to play 1 minion and then kind of just end your turn. That can limit a lot of playstyles for many players, right? Maybe they really wanted to play like 2 or 3 minions for that turn, but because of Plagiarize, they can't. Otherwise, they give it all to you and give you value. The issue with this card is it is a value. It gives it to you in hand. It doesn't give it to you immediately onto the board. So there's no immediate tempo effect. You still have to pay mana for those cards. Value Rogue doesn't really, it's a little bit slow. Rogue is more about tempo, honestly. And obviously, Galakrond Rogue taking a hit, the value side of it is definitely going away a little bit. I think Rogue is definitely going to shift towards more of an aggressive play style. And hand space might also be an issue as well. Like if your opponent plays like, 6-7 cards in one turn, you're going to get 6-7 cards in the turn. They can potentially burn a lot of your deck, or burn like a really key piece of your deck as well. So there's definitely some limitations. I think it's a good secret to have just to play around. Even if you don't actually play it in your deck, your opponent might think you do and have to play around it weirdly. So just the fact that it's actually a secret that exists makes this a pretty good card. Will you run this in like Secret Rogue? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's better than Ambush or Dirty Tricks, to be honest. Like you definitely rather draw your own cards. And yeah, I don't know. Like it doesn't give you immediate tempo, as I said. So I don't think it's actually that good. It's pretty interesting. I think it's good to have it in the pool, but it's actually not that strong in my opinion. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Now we have Initiation, a 6-mana spell for Priest. Deal 4 damage to a minion. If it kills it, summon a new copy. Really interesting card. Obviously, 6-mana deal 4 is very weak, right? Shadow Bolt is 3-mana deal 4, and that doesn't really see play. So dealing 4 for 6 damage is very bad. But the thing you can do with this card is you can set it up so that the minion that you're targeting already has 4 or less health, right? If it has 4 or less health, when you kill it, you're actually going to summon a copy of it. And that's really strong. That's kind of like the Headmaster Kel'Thuzad effect. You kind of swing the board a little bit because you kill their minion and you get a minion of your own, and you get the original minion, right? If it's a big minion, you get it back. I'm not sure any deck would run this though. Once again, it's the kind of same argument of you don't mind picking this up from Renew, for example, if you're Priest. I don't think a Priest deck would want to run this card. I don't think it's good enough to run. And it's not bad to pick up from Discover, but I think there are also better options. I think this card is a little bit too slow. 6 mana is very expensive for this kind of effect. So yeah, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10. Volpera Toxblade, or Toxin Blade, is a rogue card. 3 mana, 3/3, very good stats. Your weapon has 2 attack whenever this is in play. That's really good. Like, I think that's really, really strong, especially in a new rogue deck, which I envision to be a thing, which is with Steel Dancer, right? Which is the 4 mana 4/4 that summons a minion with cost equal to your weapon's attack. Obviously synergizing with this perfectly. I mean, there's a natural curve that you can dagger up on turn 2. You can play Volpera Toxin Blade, hope it sticks, and then play Steel Dancer for a 3-drop additionally. That's really good. And outside of that, it's just pretty good, right? It kind of just has Deadly Poison with a 3/3 body. That's pretty strong. If you have, if you need a little bit of burn in the late game to finish your opponent off, great. If you need to buff your weapon a little bit more to take a value trade or take a trade, fantastic, right? You can play this just on 3 as a 3/3. It's not bad. There's no additional tag or no additional effect, but you kind of get some of the tempo swing back just with the weapon if you do already have a weapon equipped. And obviously Rogue can have that with just the dagger. So I actually think this is a really good card. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. More Rogue cards now. We have Shifty Sophomore. 4 mana 4/4 Stealth, Spell Burst, add a combo card to your hand. So obviously really good for Stealth Rogue. Is that going to be great? Maybe. But this is not really an aggro card, right? It's a 4 mana 4/4, so decent stats, not outstanding. And it adds a combo card to your hand. So obviously you can high roll and get something like Edwin Van Cleef a lot of the time. How many combo cards are there? Like what's the percentage you're going to get at Van Cleef? I think it's actually pretty often. There's not that many combo cards. Obviously they did add a lot more in this expansion due to the dual class. So you could sometimes lower on that. But a lot of the combo cards they added were pretty strong. Maybe you get something like a Brain Freeze. Maybe you get something like a Coerce, right? And it's just really, really good. So I think the card's pretty good. It's not really good for a tempo deck because it's still a 4/4. It's not too bad, actually. But it's more of a value card for sure, just because of the spell burst and it adds something to your hand. So yeah, I don't really see this being played in some sort of aggressive deck. I think there are better options on turn 4. Even the Lillian card is better, I think, just for a more aggressive stat line. But 4/4 still not too bad. So I'm just going to give this a 5 out of 10. This is a really cool card for Rogue now. Self-Sharpening Sword, 3 mana 1/4. Really, really cool effect. After your hero attacks, gain 1 attack. So how this is going to work is the first attack is going to be a 1/4. Then it's going to become a 2/3 weapon. Then it's going to become a 3/2 weapon. And then it's going to become a 4/1 weapon at the final durability. So that's a lot of attacks and a lot of damage you can deal with this weapon, right? In total, it's actually dealing 10 damage for a 3 mana weapon, which is incredibly insane. If you think about the fact that normally a weapon deals 6 damage, right? Normally the weapon stat line for 3 mana is 3/2, which is 6 overall damage. This deals 10. It's actually really, really good. And you can buff this with, the Volpera we saw previously or something like Deadly Poison. I think this is a really good card. It fits perfectly into that aggressive weapon rogue style deck. You can play Dr. Krastenov after this and buff it some more. And it's going to gain 1 attack every time your hero attacks. If you can buff the durability of this card, it's obviously going to be even better. So, a lot of potential for this card. I think it's actually incredibly strong. The issue is, do I think the kind of rogue deck will appear? And do I think the archetype will actually be in the meta for this card to be relevant? I hope so. I really hope so. So I'm actually going to give this card an 8 out of 10. I think this is really good. Blessing of Authority is up next. 5 mana, give a minion 8/8. It can't attack heroes this turn. So the way I like to look at this card is it's just a 5 mana, 8/8 rush. Right? Because you obviously have to have a minion on board that's sticking. So that's the one condition with this card. But if you do, it's basically an 8/8 rush, right? Because it can't attack heroes this turn, but it can attack heroes later on. So the turn that you play this spell, it can't attack heroes. But next turn it can. So that's basically the rush effect, right? And the question you got to ask yourself is, would you play a 5 mana 8/8 rush? 100% yes, right? That's absolutely bonkers. Obviously, as I said, you do need to have a minion to stick, so you can kind of reduce that effect a little bit. Maybe it's actually like a 6 mana 8/8 rush. Right? Maybe it's a little bit more expensive than that. Maybe it's actually you're not getting 8/8. Maybe, it's a little bit less value. Maybe you're getting actually 6/6 or 7/7 effectively. That's still pretty good, though. I think this card is really, really strong, especially in a buff Paladin kind of archetype, which is kind of what Paladin wants to do, especially with the legendary and obviously with the discounting minion. So, yeah, this is really good. Like, you get a board to stick as Paladin, which hopefully you can do. Paladins have a lot of good early game. And if you do, you play this on turn 5, you're going to create a massive minion that's going to be very hard for your opponent to deal with outside of a Shadow Word Death. Obviously, it can't go face, so it's not that aggressive. But yeah, it's just basically a rush. Look at this as the 5 mana 8/8 rush. I think it's insane. I think it's a 9 out of 10, honestly. I think it's a really good card. Up next, we have Athletic Studies for Warrior. It's a studies card for a Warrior, obviously. Discover a Rush minion, your next one costs 1 less. I think this is pretty good. Rush, obviously, is a great mechanic, and a lot of minions do have Rush, so the pool of Rush minions is a little bit diluted compared to the other archetypes and tribes of minions. But I think this is still pretty strong. I think the studies overall are just all very strong, because then you're able to discover a minion, and your next one is going to cost less, so you can preemptively play this, obviously, and then get your Rush minion out there for a little bit cheaper. Once again, the issue with this card is, do I think it will be run in a deck? I don't think so, right? I think it would be pretty good to discover off something like a Lackey, right? Ethereal Lackey for Warrior, but I don't think you want to run this in a Warrior deck. There are just better things to run, I think. So I'm just going to give this a 6 out of 10. Another card that was released was Commencement, a Paladin Warrior dual class spell, 7 mana, summon a minion from your deck, give it Taunt and Divine Shield. So obviously playing into that big Paladin and big Warrior archetype. I think this card is pretty strong, right? It's basically the recruit effect, and the minion that you get, you automatically give it Taunt and Divine Shield, so actually it's pretty defensive as well. I think the Taunt makes it really, really good, because otherwise you're just playing a 7 mana, get a random minion from your deck. Maybe if it doesn't have Taunt, you're just going to be dead on the backswing. And because it gives it Taunt and Divine Shield, it makes it pretty difficult for your opponent to deal with it. So I think it's actually a pretty good feel for big Paladin and big Warrior. Do I think it's going to be good enough? Do I think it's going to make those decks competitive? I'm not sure. Maybe it'll push it to like tier 2. Right now it's kind of unplayable, but maybe now it'll become like low tier 2. I hope so. Those seem like really fun decks, so definitely gonna be trying this card out. I'm not sure if it's gonna be that great, so I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10. I think it has potential though, for sure. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for this one. Those are cards left, guys. We have the 3 mana 1/6 Enchanted Cauldron, a neutral card. Spell burst, cast a random spell of the same cost. So very interesting. It's a 3 mana 1/6, so Magic Carpet stat line. That's pretty weak stat lines, honestly. Obviously, Magic Carpet is only good because of the effect. You're only getting 7 worth of stats, and it's really, really backloaded, so this really doesn't impact the board at all. It's not a threat for your opponent to deal with. It does have Spell Burst, and the Spell Burst effect, I mean, this is kind of a meme, I think, because, like, let's say you play this and you play a 4-cost spell on the next turn, right, or even a 3-cost spell, then you're going to cast another random 4-cost or 3-cost spell, right? But that could be anything. Like, that could literally be anything, and because it's random, this is just not going to be good enough. I feel like it's too RNG focused. 1 out of 10. Smug Senior, neutral card, 6 mana 5/7. Taunt, Death Rattle, add a 5/7 ghost with Taunt to your hand. Pretty decent, actually. Pretty good stats for 6 mana. 5/7. The important thing, it does have Taunt, so it's really defensive. 5/6 for 7. 5/7 for 6 mana, sorry. Isn't that great? You're getting 12 worth of stats for 6. Not bad. The Death Rattle doesn't really give you any tempo. It gives you a 5/7 Taunt with 5/7 Taunt into your hand. Not sure how much that costs. I'm presuming that costs 6 mana. So you're kind of getting a little bit more value. You could play it again next turn. It's not very sticky though, because if this is like add it to your hand, if this was summon a 5/7 ghost, that would be absolutely insane. Obviously they won't print that. So because this is kind of limited to, you know, you have to pay another 6 mana, I presume, for the ghost next turn or on a following turn. I think this card's actually pretty bad. It's kind of just pack filler, to be honest, I think. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Sneaky Delinquent is a neutral card, 2 mana 3/1 stealth. Death Rattle, add a 3/1 ghost with stealth to your hand. So very similar to the previous card with adding a ghost. But I think this card's actually a little bit better. Obviously it already has stealth. You're basically preloading 3 attack onto the board. Kind of like that Spy Mistress stat line. For 2 mana, so you're getting 1 extra mana. You have to pay 1 extra mana, and you get another 3/1 ghost with stealth to your hand. Once again, I'm not sure how much the ghosts cost. I'm assuming the token is going to cost 2 mana as well. So basically a 2 mana 3/1, you get another 2 mana 3/1 to your hand. They both have stealth. Not bad, really good, and obviously Stealth Rogue, pretty solid. Maybe this is good enough. I mean, they already play Skyveteer, which is the reverse stat line of this, a 2 mana 1/3. So maybe a 2 mana 3/1 is actually better. It's more aggressive, right? You can pair this with Ashtung Slayer, to get that +3 attack and immunity on the following turn. So actually, I think this is pretty solid. Once again, it depends on how good Stealth Rogue is. I don't really think this fits into any other archetype. It doesn't have any other effects or tribes. So pretty much Stealth Rogue or bust. And yeah, kind of hard to say. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10 though. It might be good. Another neutral card, Ogre Mansa, 5 mana 3/7. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, summon a 2/2 skeleton with Taunt. Okay, pretty solid. You're getting 10 worth of stats for 5 mana, not bad. Issue is this card initially doesn't have Taunt, and initially doesn't have Rush once again, so very not unimpactful. You're pretty much always guaranteed to get like a 2/2 though, unless they already have minions on board. I mean, if they commit a spell to answer this minion, you're going to get at least a 2/2 skeleton, right? It's not too bad. You can kind of see this card as a 5-mana 5/9 in that sense. Actually, I think that's pretty solid. It's kind of a good counter against decks that only run spells, obviously. Like, if you're playing against something like Spell Druid, this card would be absolutely broken against that. Because they would just give you like 2 or 3 2/2 skeletons for free. Most control decks run a lot of spells, so this can be very good, actually, in some sort of mid-range deck that kind of wants to target around control decks and kind of wants to counter control decks a little bit. I'm not really sure though, because it does fill your board with 2/2 taunts. Not that strong, honestly. It's, you know, not that great. Most decks can't really make use of the token synergy. Maybe some sort of Shaman or Druid can make use of this card, but I don't really see this seeing play, to be honest. I'm going to give it a 3, though. It might see experimentation. It might be okay, actually. So 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Molten Blast for Shaman. 3-mana spell. Deal 2 damage. Summon that many elementals. Obviously meant to fit into a spell damage deck. If you have +1 spell damage, it's going to deal 3 damage and summon 3 1/1 elementals. So even if you have +1 spell damage, this card is already going to be really good. Dealing 3 and summoning, you know, basically a 3/3 is very good for 3 mana. So even on the base level, right? Getting a 2/2 that deals 2 damage for 3 mana, that's not too bad. Like, it's not great. It's honestly not great, but it's not too bad. But if you are playing a spell damage control deck, in Shaman maybe, I think you definitely run this card. Is a spell damage control deck going to exist? Possibly. If you're playing Malagasta Shaman, maybe you want to play this as well, because actually this can also go face, very importantly. So it is 3 mana, but with Lightning Bloom and, you know, with the new studies that can reduce the cost of spell damage minions, you don't actually mind that this is 3 damage, I don't think. So I feel like this will see play. I think Malagasta Spell Druid, Malagasta Spell Shaman is actually going to be pretty solid. Some sort of OTK deck. It might be low tier too, so I'm actually going to give this a 5 out of 10, I think. Next up, we have a Shaman weapon here, Roon Dagger. After your hero attacks, gain spell damage +1 this turn. Okay, so initially I was like, oh my god, this card is bonkers. Then I read that it says this turn. So you can't preload this. You can't just preload 3 spell damage onto your hero permanently for the rest of the game. That would be absolutely broken. I think this is pretty solid. I mean, 2 mana, 1/3 weapon, not too bad. Like, you know, you normally want to get that for 1 mana, so you're paying 1 extra mana for the spell damage. It's kind of spell damage on tap. You can preload that, which is pretty nice, right? Let's say you play this on turn 2. You don't make use of all of it. On turn 6, you can swing, get 1 spell damage, and then you can play the 6/6 that summons another 6/6. Not bad, right? You know, if you're playing Malagos, you can preload this and get an additional spell damage when you do your combo. Pretty good, right? Obviously, this will fit into a Malagos deck for sure. Any deck that makes use spell damage is probably quite good this deck. Any sort of control deck as well, I feel like, because sometimes there's just little breakpoints that you want the AoE to deal 4 instead of 3, or you know, you want your Earthquake to deal 6 and 3 instead of 7 and 2. So, I mean, instead of 5 and 2, sorry. So, yeah, this is pretty solid, I feel like. Good in Control Shaman, definitely good in some OTK Malagos spell damage Shamans, so pretty strong card. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Interesting 1-drop here, 1 mana, 1/2, Intrepid Initiate. Spell burst, gain 2 attack. So pretty interesting. You play this on turn 1, not the best stat lines, a 1/2, so okay, decent. Then you play a spell next turn, and it immediately gains 2 attack, so not too bad. Maybe some sort of Zoo can make use of this card. Obviously going to be some sort of aggressive deck that wants to use this card. I think Zoo is the best candidate for this. Some sort of Magic Carpet Zoo. Obviously it's 1 mana as well, so not too bad, honestly. You can get some extra attack on it and give it rush with Magic Carpet, so pretty decent. I don't think it's super great though, so I'm going to go to 4 out of 10. Next up, we have a really insane board clear for Shaman. Tidal Wave. It's a lifesteal spell for 8 mana that deals 3 damage to all minions. So very interesting board clear. It can obviously clear the board and also heal you, which is really, really important. Like, lifesteal is so impactful on this card. Like, even if it hits 2 or 3 minions, you're getting like 9 health back, which is really obviously great for a control deck. So High-Ender Shaman is going to love this card. Do I think Control Shaman is going to be good in the expansion? Honestly, no. So I think that's the reason why this card kind of falls short. But even with that spell damage dagger that we saw previously, right, you maybe play the dagger. When you get to turn 8, you want to clear the board. You swing with the dagger, and this now deals 4 damage to all minions, which is a much bigger breakpoint. And then it becomes a better flame strike, right? So this card in a vacuum is actually incredibly strong. The issue is I don't think Control Shaman is going to be good. So because of that, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have a Warrior card. In Formation, 2 mana, add 2 random taunt minions to your hand. Can be decent. Into the Fray is still in the meta, I believe. The 1 mana, give your taunt minions +2/+2. So maybe in some sort of aggressive taunt warrior build, you want to run this, but that doesn't really seem feasible in the current meta or in the new meta. You're getting 2 taunt minions for 2 mana, which is kind of slow, obviously. Kind of like a Thought Steal effect, but it's random, right? So you could actually low roll a lot and maybe get like a 1 mana 0/4 or get a Silverback Patriarch, right? There are a lot of bad taunts out there. You could also hire or get Winged Guardian or, stuff like that. So the variance is very high with this card. Sometimes you're going to feel great, sometimes you can feel absolutely terrible. So because of that, I think it's just not going to be that great. Cards with RNG normally aren't too fantastic, especially with a card with as large variance as this one. So I'm going to give this card a 2 out of 10. Next up, we have a Divine Rager, another Rager card. And all the Rager cards so far have been memes. And I think this one is probably also going to be a meme, yes. I mean, it's a 4-mana 5/1 Divine Shield, which is not too bad, I guess. I mean, you can kind of see that as a 4-mana 5, maybe 2 or 3, with because the Divine Shield technically is like 1 or 2 health, basically. It can kind of, absorb something. This does have more attacks, so it can make use of that Divine Shield a bit more effectively, but it's an elemental. I mean, no one's going to run around elementals right now. This is just a complete meme. I feel like this is terrible. Yeah, sorry, Rager. 1 out of 10. Another card for Rogue and Warrior, Cutting Class. 5 mana spell, draw 2 cards, cost 1 less per attack of your weapon. A very interesting card here. I'm pretty sure this cost reduction is permanent. So if you attacked like twice, it becomes an Arcane Intellect. That's pretty good. If you attacked 3 or more times, it becomes insane. It becomes a 2 mana draw 2, or even a 0 mana draw 2 a lot of the time in the late game. I think this effect does stack. So a lot of the time, this card is just going to be a discounted Arcane Intellect. It's a lot of the time also going to be 0 mana off the top. So yeah, I think it's a really strong card. I mean, I don't even think Rogue and Warrior needs more card draw. Maybe you don't even run this card, but I feel like this is just better than a lot of the card draw, right? Like, Battle Rage is obviously already really insane. I think this card is also really insane. Like, think of it as pretty effectively a 0 mana 2 mana card draw, right? 0 mana to 2 mana draw 2 cards, because Warrior and Rogue love to swing, and there's so many different weapons now in the game that they were released. So both those cards are definitely going to be using weapons in the next expansion, which means this card is pretty much going to be a free card draw for both these classes. Yeah, this is a 9 out of 10. Next up, we have a very cute Murloc here, Fishy Flyer, 4 mana 4/3 Rush. Death Rattle, add a 4/3 Ghost with Rush to your hand. So a lot of these like Ghost mechanics, we've seen already 2 of these. This is the 3rd one, so I'm assuming once again the Ghost is a 4 mana 4/3 Rush. So pretty solid. I mean, obviously Murloc Paladin probably wants to play this card just because it is a Murloc. But outside of that, I don't think this card really sees play. I mean, dealing 4 damage for 4 mana is kind of weak. When you can a lot of the time do that for like 2 to 3 mana, most decks. Obviously, you do get another 4 damage rush in your hand, but you still have to pay mana for that, right? It's not free. So this card kind of seems, underwhelming for sure. Once again, I think this might see play in Murlocs. They do have Felfin, which is already a 4-drop, so maybe it doesn't even see play in Murloc Paladin. I'm not really sure. But because it's a Murloc, I'm going to give this a little bit of higher rating. I'm going to give it a 5. Would have been much lower, but because it's a Murloc, you get the benefit of the doubt, Fishy Flyer. Couple of cards left, guys. We have the Voracious Reader. This is supposed to be a 2 mana card. Obviously, it says 0, but this is discounted. So this is a 2 mana 1/3. At the end of your turn, draw until you have 3 cards. So if you guys play Wild or have played Hearthstone in the past, this is basically Jeeves, but incredibly stronger because it's a 2 mana. I think this card is incredibly scary. It's a neutral card, which means every class has access to it. So any aggressive deck, I think, would want to play this card. Any aggressive deck, especially something like Zoo, who wants to obviously dump their hand incredibly fast, would love to play this card, right? I mean, at worst, it's a 2 mana draw 3 at the end of your turn, so with the Aluneth effect, not too bad. But if the opponent doesn't deal with it, you can get even more card draw on the following turn. If it sticks once, this card is absolutely broken already. Obviously, it only has 3 health, so it's pretty easy for your opponent to deal with, honestly, but because your opponent has to sacrifice so many resources into it and potentially make some bad trades because this minion is so strong, that already gives you a little bit of an advantage. So I think this card is really, really strong. The fact that it's neutral will probably mean that we'll see play in a lot of different aggressive decks, right? Any deck that kind of doesn't really have a lot of card draw, it kind of dumps their hand really quick, can make use of this card. So I think this card is actually an 8 out of 10. And last, but certainly not least, this has been a really long video, guys. You guys are still watching. Shout out to all of you. But we have Fell Guardians here. It is a 7 mana Demon Hunter spell. Obviously, this was discounted, so initially it is 7 mana. And it says, summon 3 1/2 demons with Taunt. Cost 1 less whenever a friendly minion dies. So obviously, this feeds really well into a token-style Demon Hunter deck. Once again, do I think that will exist? Probably not. I think an aggressive tempo Demon Hunter is just better. Like, why would you run tokens? This is kind of a payoff card for running tokens, but it's not that great. I mean, technically, you're getting 3/6 worth of stats with Taunt. So how much does that really cost? Like, you're probably quite happy paying 3 mana for that. Obviously, if you pay 2 mana or 1 mana, you're going to be ecstatic, but you're going to have to see, 6 minions die for that to happen. So you're not really going to be able to play this on turn 2 or turn 3. By the time 6 minions have died, it's probably going to be around turn 5 or 6, honestly. I mean, maybe you're playing a token deck, so maybe it'll be a bit sooner, maybe like turn 4 even. But then it's just a turn 4 3 mana or 4 mana 3/6, which is not that great, honestly. Like, it's not the kind of payoff card that you really want to see for these token style decks. So I don't think it's actually that great. I mean, finally Demon Hunter getting some weaker cards, right? I mean, I don't think this is that good. I don't think you want to play tokens in Demon Hunter. I think you'd even rather play big, honestly, rather than tokens. So I'm actually going to say it's a 2 out of 10. And that is it for this video, guys. Woo! It has been a long one. It has honestly been a really long video. It's probably going to be over an hour, so I apologize for that. But if you stuck through it till the end, shout out to all of you guys. This has been really, really good. Last episode of my card review series, obviously. Had a lot of fun making and recording these and just looking at all these cards and discussing them as well. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the videos. Next up, I'm going to do some theory crafts for all of the classes before Scholomance. So stay tuned for that. But until my next video, I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.